Tammy and friends. Texas raised, Jesus saved, loving all things cheetah. I cannot wait to introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Cathy Krafve, and I recently spoke with her this year at Deep in the Heart, a conference here in Texas that was over the top. My coffee cup today says, I just love weekends. And let me tell you, I met this woman several years ago on a weekend with Christian communicators, and I've loved her ever since. What you're going to get with Cathy Krafve is, you're going to get a big yeehaw and a whole lot of truth. A candid conversation gone full throttle. Meet my friend, author and speaker Cathy Krafve today as we wrestle with relationships, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hello, Cathy. It's good to have you.
I'm so glad to be here, Tammy. I just love you. And it's always any excuse to have a conversation with you makes me happy. I've been looking forward to it all week.
Thank you. And I've been looking forward to it too, Cathy, because every time we have a conversation, I always learn something from you. So what I'm hoping is that my listeners today will too. I'm going to kick this off with a question that I think all of us will be able to relate with. In the last few years, things have been very different. What are you seeing, Cathy, as you talk with women all across the country now?
Yeah, that's really a great point, Tammy. I mean, I think COVID gave us a chance to understand something that was true, but we didn't realize it. I think people really do not like to be isolated at all. I mean, I personally didn't mind a little retreat, but I didn't want to feel disconnected from people. I want to take a moment, spend some quiet time with God, and then re-engage with my friends and my family. And I think COVID really showed us the difference between being isolated and being influential in a real positive way. So I think people are ready to be back in there and influencing their families, their communities in good ways. That's what I'm seeing.
I agree with you. And I was just having a conversation in the last couple of days with another speaker friend of mine, and we were talking about how so many people have not come out of isolation. And so many people are not only still there, but where they used to get out of their house every day, or where they used to do face-to-face talking with people every day, they find themselves doing that like once a week.
Right. Yeah, I think that's so true. Yeah.
You know, you have talked a lot about relationship mending and things like that whenever we have conversations together. Why do you think nowadays, and maybe it's just because things are just so different, but why are people so argumentative nowadays? Keyboard assassins. That's what I call them, keyboard assassins on social media. Why are people so argumentative?
Yeah, I think that's so true. I noticed it so much. Things that used to be considered grossly impolite, like just so rude, now people think that's funny. And as long as they're hurting someone else, it's okay. But if they themselves get hurt, that's totally different. That's not okay. But I think the truth is we've lost so many of our communication skills that made us kind-hearted. Some of that is no longer coming through in the way we speak to each other. And so we're seeing a lot of bullying and canceling and arguing. And those are things that are just communication skills. I mean, it's really easy to fix those in your family, especially, but a lot of people don't know that. So I just think we're not getting the right information about how communication can be so positive and influential. I don't know if I'm being clear enough, Tammy. Maybe I need you to redirect me a little here. I have a lot of thoughts about this.
And I want to hear every one of those thoughts. One of the things that I have learned, Cathy, is that people are about as happy as they set their minds to be. So, they can wake up and say, this is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Or they can wake up on the negative side of the bed, and because all of us have so much that's bombarding us from every direction. But I think that honestly, life is better when we start every single day fresh. So
yeah,
I like what you're saying. To me, you're an expert in communication. So what do you think is helpful for times that we're living in right now?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that earlier isolation. One reason I think people are argumentative is they think it's a way of connecting because they feel very passionate about something and they feel that they're sharing their passion and that should draw you in. And I was guilty of this. So I actually have a list of clues when I'm being argumentative that I keep for myself because I needed to learn that. And it took me into my adult years to figure it out. So I thought I was connecting by sharing my passion when really I was pushing people away. So I think that's part of what's happening. We don't, as a culture, we're not teaching the communication skills that draw people in. And so we think we're connecting over this passionate issue or whatever, but really what we don't know is the other person is shutting down and walking away as quickly as they can. So I think to answer your real question, that the answer is we don't have to agree to be unified. We can have disagreements and we will have different opinions. And that's great. I mean, that's actually a beautiful thing as long as we learn to have better communication skills. So we're not just writing people off because they don't agree with us. I mean, you won't have any friends if you do that.
That's exactly right. That's, I see on social media all the time where people are saying, I'm cleaning out my friend box.
Right.
Things like that. And it seems like friendships have become disposable.
Right.
One of the things that I have always told my kids and told people is never burn a bridge. You may have to back up and love people from a distance sometimes.
Yeah, right.
Never burn a bridge. And now there have been times, that there are exceptions to that rule, but it's very small, Cathy.
Right.
Very, very small. So
I agree. I think it's so important. I love my friends that give me a chance to think harder about life. Like I don't want to be superficial in my thinking, Tammy. I mean, you know that about me. I want to go deeper. And when you have friends that have a different perspective than yours or even a different opinion, like they've come to a different conclusion, but they're thoughtful people. What's wonderful is they challenge you to really think through where, it's not bad to find out early in the process that you're actually wrong. I kind of would rather know early rather than later.
Isn't that the truth? And,
so true.
And in my life, I've developed a taste for crow because I've eaten so much of it.
Me too. Me too.
So if you had to say, let's say 3 to 5 things that we can do to make conversations better. A while ago, you talked about a checklist. You had a checklist of things. Yes. Help us know what are some things we can do today. What are some things we can do to make relationships better, Cathy?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty simple one. So I love talking about how to make conversations better. And one thing I always try to tell people is if you ask better questions, you're going to have better conversations. So don't ask a question that's like a gotcha question, like, oh, I tricked you into acknowledging that I'm right and you're wrong. Don't ask those questions. Really ask the questions that allow that person to open up. So that's one thing, ask better questions and really listen and try to understand their point. And the second one is share authentically of your own life. As you know, I speak very frequently about my abortion, which was so hard for me to do at first. Thankfully, I got to Christian communicators. I mean, y'all did such a nice job of helping me learn how to present that in a gentle and tender way. But by sharing that story and getting my courage to do that, what I discovered is all these other women had stories that they weren't sharing. And now when you're authentic with your own life, next thing you know, everybody around you is telling you their story. So that's the big bonus. Being authentic draws people to you to really have those sweet conversations. But as far as the clues about when you're being argumentative, which I don't call them rules because I don't like to make up my own rules. Like, I'm not sure I have that much confidence, but I get a clue for myself, like bing, 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 Cathy. So my clue is if I say my passionate opinion one time and the other person kind of pushes back And if I feel compelled to speak it again the same way, I know I'm being argumentative. That doesn't persuade anybody of anything. I've already presented it once in a passionate way. I could just wait, give myself time to think, figure out if there's something else I could say that would allow that other person to be open to my ideas. But arguing is just not going to do anything. It does not accomplish anything. So, and I had to learn that the hard way in my own marriage. So I'm really sensitive about it now. I just don't argue with my husband. If we get to a point where we're doing this, like boom, 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 we're not agreeing, then we both take a step back. We both ponder, we pause, we ponder, we pray, and then we proceed. Don't you love it? I have peace for all that.
I love that. But not only do I love that, but I really like where you said that when you passionately, there's a P again.
Yeah.
When you passionately tell your opinion, and if they don't grasp it, if they don't grab it,
right.
What I have found, I know in my life, because I'm opinionated, because
yeah,
I talk a lot. I'm one of those, I'm not an introvert by any means. I'm an extrovert.
And, don't forget, Tammy, we're both Texas. And in Texas girls, we're strong women. We have our opinions. We may not be right, but we think we are.
That's the point. What you just said makes exactly what I'm saying bullseye. We think we're right. And so a lot of times, whenever we throw our opinion out there and we say it passionately, if nobody grabs it,
right,
pull back. Because what people have a tendency to do, me included, and I have also learned the hard way, Cathy, that I will keep pushing it out there thinking that I'm going to talk them into it.
Right. Well, Jesus did that. Like he told the Pharisees they were hypocrites because he loved them. So he was right. We know he was right about that. And he was loving them by saying it. But he didn't, when they disagreed with him, he pulled back from them and just retreated. And it's interesting, that's how he met the woman at the well. So he presented what he needed to the Pharisees, and then he left to rest. And he's resting, and there she comes. He meets her while he's resting. How beautiful is that? But he did that. He did that. And I think it's so important for us to realize we're not Jesus. So my thing, my little phrase I coined for my kids when we were homeschooling, I used to tell the children, God is all knowing, mama is not.
That's right. That's right. And what would you give me an example, Cathy, if you have someone, okay, I'm just going to use myself. Let's say that I have an opinion and I think it's really good and I think it's the right opinion. Right. I think it's the one that's going to work. And I toss it into the ring and nobody bites, instead of me tossing it in again and again and again. So what you're telling me to do is just back up, retreat, and forget it?
Oh, no, because just like Jesus, he kept coming back to the hypocrites. He began very gently by saying, I'm not going to be able to quote him, but he began by saying, hypocrites are this way. And then later he said, you hypocrites. So that's a change. It was third person. And then of course I'm a writer, so I would notice this. It's first person, like you is second person. So he directed that directly at them. So he came in actually stronger after he'd given them time to process. But I think so to answer your question, I think it's really important to respect people enough to give them time to process, especially when you've given them a very important, life-changing, like mindset-changing idea. Especially if you really are passionately convinced it's true and you may be right. You don't want to soft pedal that in a way, because you really want people to understand life-changing ideas, right? Transformational truth. So, but sometimes you do have to pull back and let them pause and ponder a little bit. But then I also think one of the things that's happening in our culture right now in America, especially, you see this on TV every night. People are not willing to do the hard work of presenting good ideas thoroughly and convincingly. That means you have to think about it in order to present an idea in a way that's convincing. So I personally think it doesn't hurt to pull back, to give the other person time to process, but it also helps you have time to ponder and process.
That's
So,
good.
but I would then re-enter the conversation. You don't just desert people because they don't agree with you. You don't. I mean, that's not commitment. That's not love. You continue to have that conversation, and you let them knock off your rough edges too. Like, I hope I would do that.
Me too. I love everything that you're saying. And what I really love as a speaker, I always tell people when I'm helping them and coaching them speak, I will say there's power in the pause. And that's what you are saying as well. Pause. Stop, back up, because there is power in the pause, because we have to let people wrap their mind around what we're saying. And I also love that you said, basically, essentially what I'm hearing is that we plan before we begin to talk and before we begin to speak it out like that.
Yes.
We plan, we pray about it, and then say it. That's important, because I hear a lot of times, Cathy, people say this, I just tell it like it is.
Yeah. Ouch. Okay. So that's a really important point. I'm glad you brought that up. In families, especially, I call those conversational adventures. Like, we would never go into the wilderness with survival in mind and not bring the tools and the skills we need. We would get trained to survive in the wilderness. But sometimes we go into our family, which is really kind of in survival mode. Like, my dad was an alcoholic. We loved him. He got in recovery and lived the last section of his life with so much grace and love and humility. But it was a survival skill that I learned as a child. There, and so many homes are that way now, where you're just trying to survive. That's why I think the isolation is feeling so strong to us. I'm not even finishing my sentences here, Tammy. I'm so passionate about this. But the point I'm trying to make is you want to make sure you have the planning in place. So that you go into that conversational adventure knowing what you want as your outcome, knowing how you want to lovingly present the idea, understanding that you may have to wait. Like, you don't build a fire and then start cooking over it in the wilderness. You build a fire, let it become embers, and then you roast your dinner on it. So the same thing is true with conversation. Sometimes you have to wait and let that glow and that of understanding develop before you start. Yeah, you just have to be patient with people, I think. I think patience is a synonym for love.
That's good. Yes, it is. Cathy, you have written several books. What do you feel is the most important, or let's just say your favorite? Which one is your favorite?
I really love, we're on topic. I love talking about how to change an argument back into a conversation.
Yes.
It was so hard in my marriage. We were arguing so much. We're both strong people. I really respected his opinion. And because I did, sometimes that made me feel insecure about my own opinion. So there were times when I just felt like I wasn't heard, and I was really feeling very isolated in my marriage even. So I started by writing that book. It came out second. I felt I did so many things wrong in my early marriage that were unhealthy. And I did that in front of my small children. So I began by writing those things down that I thought might help the kids, so they wouldn't have to make the same mistakes we made. I wanted, when you confess a sin, like we call it confessing a sin in church, but when you tell the truth about how you've messed up, you've just given your kids two choices. They can do it the way you did it, which messed up, or they can look for new ways to do things. So a lot of what I wrote was a confession to my own children. Like, I don't think this worked very well. And so this was all the stuff I learned the hard way, including my list of clues when I'm being argumentative is in that book.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
And Ephesians 5:16 tells us, so be careful how you act. These are difficult days. Don't be fools, be wise. Make the most of every opportunity you have to do good. I think, Cathy, the older I get, the more I realize that arguments don't work.
No.
That I want to have relationships, that I want to leave a conversation feeling like it was connecting. I want people to run to me, not from me. Does that make sense?
Oh, Tammy, you do that so beautifully, so beautifully. I love it every time I hear you speak. I just am filled with joy because of the way you approach all your messages. And today's just another example. What I like, I'm thinking I may need to change my cut line on some of my stuff. You know, you asked me why I wrote the books. I want to change our culture because I'm concerned. And we've lived long enough to know things have really evolved quite a bit and not in a healthy way, in an unwholesome, unhealthy way that's not safe or good for families or children. So what I wanted to do was change the culture one conversation at a time. And that just popped into my head as we talk.
I love that. I love change the culture one conversation at a time.
Isn't that awesome?
Girl, that's real good.
I know. It happens to me every time I talk to you. You always inspire me.
Thank you. Cathy, you know, I love talking to you because you give wisdom. So if some of our listeners would like to connect with you, if they want to find your books, I want you to have you got your books right there handy with you?
Well, I don't know if you can see them up there. Let me get one. Yeah. Okay. I try to keep them pretty handy. This is the marriage conversation book. I wrote it first. It came out second. This is the art of drawing out authentic conversations. I love both my books, but I never say that without acknowledging James Michener. James Michener said, "I'm not a great writer. I'm a great rewriter." So both of my books had really exceptional publishers, and they helped me so much. I'm really proud of the way they came out. We hear stories all the time that they're helping people.
Oh, yeah.
So
you know,
they're really different, but we love both of them.
At the Deep in the Heart conference, my product table was right beside yours. And you know, I saw people coming to your table after you were talking about certain things. Yeah. They wanted your books. They wanted to hear about the relationship, things that could help with relationships, because a lot of people have relationship issues in their marriage, in their family, with their adult children, with their teenage children. Right. And I love your second book. I have that book, and that is just, yes, that book is so good. So I'm going to highly recommend. I
don't know which one it is.
It was the one you just held up, The Well.
Yeah. Oh, good.
So good.
Book. It's great for Bible studies.
It is. And so I'm really going to recommend you look up Cathy Krafve.
Thank you.
CathyKrafve. Now tell them about your podcast before.
Okay. I love the podcast. You came on and told your story. I love sharing your story and your wisdom. We record 2 podcasts when we record, and then we push them out. So one is the story of the guest, and the other one is the wisdom of the guest. I've got such great people coming on. As you know, Becky Carpenter's fixing to be on the show. Like, I've already got it recorded. I'm just writing the blog this week. So that'll be coming out about how she has embraced the life after losing her beautiful little daughter. And I love what she said about her daughter running to Jesus. Yes. As she passed away in a car accident. So what we try to do on our show is I try to get really outstanding experts to come on. I have another friend coming on who's going to talk about erectile dysfunction. I just try to take the topics that nobody wants to talk about at church. And I try to give you something so that if you go to your Sunday school class and you say, I want to talk about this subject, and I have a podcast that we can listen to. So you don't have to even say, this happened to me, or I've been wondering about this. You just say, here's a good topic. Here's a good podcast. Let's listen. And that's so easy. You can do that in your Bible study anywhere. So we don't charge for that. We just want people to have the information.
All right. Tell them what the name of your podcast is and where they can find it.
Okay. But I want to also say this, you know, Tammy, when you start talking about writing a book, they tell you to build a platform. And God told me, Cathy, you're not building a platform, you're building a catapult. And that has changed everything for me. So I felt suddenly no pressure. Instead of feeling all this pressure, like, what am I going to talk about next? I just bring on the people that I think are interesting and that I admire. And then I help them get their messages out there. And I love that so much. It's just so beautiful the way God did that. I didn't think of it. He did. It's a catapult. So the name of the podcast is Fireside Talk Radio. And if you put in Fireside Talk, we'll come up ahead of Theodore Roosevelt. He did Fireside Chats. Yes. So we actually come up ahead of him on some things, which the first time it happened, I was so surprised and really kind of blown away by that. But God is good. He just does what he wants to. And I'm kind of dorky. I'm kind of a weak link. And I just let him be God and let him be mighty. So that's what we do.
Well, thank you. Cathy, thank you so much for being with me today. And you teach me something every time I talk with you. So until we cross paths again, and I hope it's soon.
Yeah, me too.
Tipping my coffee cup at you now, my sweet friend. Bye-bye.
Bye.